Last week we climbed every rank inside the CJNG, the cartel that just lost its leader. But while the world was watching El Mencho fall, something else was already happening in the mountains of Sinaloa. The oldest, most powerful, and most sophisticated criminal organization in Mexican history was tearing itself apart from the inside. The Sinaloa Cartel, founded by El Chapo, built over 4 decades into a global empire worth hundreds of billions of dollars. A cartel so embedded in the fabric of Mexican society that entire regions depend on it for jobs, infrastructure, and order. And right now, with El Mencho dead and CJNG territory up for grabs, the Sinaloa Cartel is fighting its most dangerous war. Not against the government, not against a rival cartel, against itself. Today we climb every rank, from the teenage lookout in the mountains of Culiacan to the men who built the most powerful drug empire the world has ever seen. Your life. He has every rank in the Sinaloa Cartel. Rank 1, the lookout. Buchan. You grew up in the Sierra Madre, the mountain range that runs through Sinaloa, Durango, and Chihuahua. This is cartel country, has been for generations. Your grandfather grew opium poppies. Your father moved shipments. And now, at 14 years old, you sit on a hilltop with a radio and a pair of binoculars. Your job is simple. If you see military vehicles, soldiers, or strangers on the road below, you call it in immediately. If you are a buchan, a lookout, the lowest rank in the Sinaloa Cartel's vast network, but in many ways the most important, because the entire operation depends on early warning. The Sinaloa Cartel has operated in these mountains for over 40 years. The community protects them, sometimes out of loyalty, sometimes out of fear, often because the cartel pays better than any legitimate employer within 200 kilometers. Your pay is around $150 to $200 a week, more than most adults in your village earn. You don't think of yourself as a criminal. You think of yourself as someone doing a job, just like your father did, just like his father before him. That's how it starts. That's how it always starts here. Rank 2, the street soldier. Sicario Culiacan, the capital of Sinaloa State, and the beating heart of the Sinaloa Cartel. This city has more cartel members per capita than anywhere else in Mexico. Entire neighborhoods are controlled by specific factions. The cartel builds schools here, paves roads, throws parties, and shoots anyone who challenges its authority. As a sicario, a street soldier, you are the visible face of the cartel's power. You patrol your neighborhood. You collect payments from local businesses. You enforce the rules. The Sinaloa Cartel's rules are different from other cartels. There is a code, at least in theory. You don't kidnap civilians, and you don't rob ordinary people. You don't kill unless ordered. These rules exist not out of morality but strategy. The cartel wants the population on its side. In 2019, when the Mexican army briefly captured El Chapo's son, Ovidio Guzman, in Culiacan, thousands of Sinaloa Cartel soldiers poured into the streets within hours. Armored vehicles, roadblocks. The army was forced to release him. The cartel had effectively defeated the Mexican state in broad daylight in its own city. That is the power you are part of now. Your pay is around $500 a week. You have a truck, a weapon, and the respect, or fear, of your neighborhood. You also have a life expectancy that drops with every passing year. Rank 3, the farmer. Gomero. The Sinaloa Cartel didn't build its empire on cocaine alone. It started with something much simpler: opium poppies and marijuana. The Sierra Madre Mountains have been growing drug crops since the 1940s. When U.S. demand for heroin exploded in the 1970s and 80s, Sinaloa farmers were ready. The cartel built an entire agricultural economy around drug production, one that today also includes massive methamphetamine labs and fentanyl production facilities. As a gomero, a farmer or lab worker, you are the foundation of the entire supply chain. You grow the poppies. You harvest the opium gum. You work in the labs that convert raw materials into heroin, meth, or fentanyl pills. Fentanyl changed everything. A kilogram of fentanyl can be produced for around $4,000 and sells for over $1 million worth of pills on U.S. streets. The Sinaloa Cartel now produces fentanyl by the ton using chemical precursors imported from China in labs hidden throughout the Sierra Madre. You earn around $300 a week. It's dangerous work. The chemicals are toxic, the labs can explode, and if the military finds you, you're looking at serious prison time. But for most families in these mountains, there is simply no alternative. Rank 4. The Transporter. Polero. The Sinaloa Cartel didn't become the world's most powerful drug trafficking organization by accident. They became it by solving one problem better than anyone else. How do you move drugs across the most heavily monitored border in the world? The answer? Every possible way, simultaneously. Tunnels, some of them hundreds of meters long with electricity, ventilation, and rail systems running beneath the US-Mexico border. Drugs hidden inside legitimate cargo, avocados, chilies, car parts. Drones carrying payloads across the border at night. Submarines and semi-submersible vessels moving cocaine up the Pacific coast. El Chapo himself oversaw much of this infrastructure personally. Under his leadership, the cartel built a logistics network that rivals those of multinational corporations. As a polero, a transporter, you manage one piece of that network. Maybe you drive a truck. Maybe you coordinate tunnel crossings. Maybe you supervise the loading of shipping containers at the port of Manzanillo. The pay scales dramatically with the risk. A simple border crossing might earn you $2,000. Managing a major tunnel operation puts hundreds of thousands of dollars within reach. And every successful crossing funds the next one. The machine never stops. And you rank 5. The Plaza Boss. Jefe de Plaza. The Sinaloa Cartel controls territory across 27 Mexican states and has operations in over 50 countries. To manage this, they use a system of plazas, defined territories, each with its own boss. As a jefe de plaza, you run one of these territories. Your city, your port, your border crossing. But here's what makes the Sinaloa model unique compared to the CJNG. The Sinaloa Cartel operates more like a federation than an army. Plaza bosses have real autonomy. You negotiate your own deals. You manage your own security. You pay a percentage upward to the leadership, but day-to-day decisions are yours. This decentralized model made the cartel incredibly resilient. When El Chapo was arrested twice and eventually extradited to the US in 2017, the cartel kept functioning because it wasn't built around one man. It was built around a system until the arrest of El Mayo Zambada in July 2024 broke that system wide open. And because El Mayo's supporters accused El Chapo's sons, the Chapitos, of betraying El Mayo to U.S. authorities to get leverage for themselves. And that accusation ignited a civil war that has been burning ever since. As a plaza boss, you now have to choose a side. Los Chapitos or La Mayiza. And choosing wrong means death. Rank 6. The Fixer. Operador. The Sinaloa Cartel's greatest competitive advantage was never its violence. Other cartels are more violent. It was corruption. Systematic, patient, institutional corruption. The cartel has spent 4 decades cultivating relationships with police commanders, military officers, judges, politicians, and customs officials at every level of Mexican society. Not by threatening them, but by paying them. Generously, consistently, for years. As an operador, a fixer, your job is to manage these relationships. You are the invisible bridge between the criminal world and the legitimate one. You know which judges can be approached before a trial, which customs supervisor will wave through a specific shipment, which police commander will tip you off before a raid. This is why Sinaloa has historically suffered fewer losses than rival cartels. Not because they fight better, but because they know what's coming before it arrives. The DEA has documented that Sinaloa corruption networks extend into virtually every level of Mexican law enforcement. Some of those networks reach into the United States as well. Border agents, local police, even federal officials have been convicted of taking cartel money. You live a double life. legitimate business on the surface. Criminal architect underneath? Your salary? Potentially millions per year. Your risk? A U.S. federal indictment that could come at any moment. Rank 7. Los Chapitos versus LA Mayiza. The Internal War. This is the story that is unfolding right now as you watch this video. In Los Chapitos, Ivan, Alfredo, Joaquin, and Ovidio Guzman Lopez, the sons of El Chapo, young, aggressive, media-savvy. They produce and traffic fentanyl on an industrial scale and have transformed the cartel into the world's leading fentanyl supplier. La Mayiza, the faction loyal to Ismael El Mayo Zambada, the quiet, methodical co-founder of the cartel who spent decades running operations from the shadows while El Chapo took the spotlight. El Mayo was arrested in July 2024 in the United States. His supporters say Joaquin Guzman Lopez lured him onto a plane and flew him directly to U.S. authorities. That betrayal, if true, broke a code that the Sinaloa Cartel had maintained for 40 years, and it ignited a war. Since September 2024, Sinaloa State has recorded some of the highest levels of cartel violence in its history. Hundreds dead. Entire neighborhoods emptied, businesses closed, schools shut. And now, with El Mencho gone and CJNG territory suddenly available, both factions are racing to expand simultaneously while fighting each other. The strategic pressure is immense. At this level, you are a senior commander for one faction. You command hundreds of soldiers. You control multiple plazas. You are either a Chapito loyalist betting that the sons of El Chapo represent the future, or a Mayiza veteran convinced that the old ways, the patient ways, are the only ways that last. Either way, and you fall asleep every night not knowing if you'll wake up in the morning. Rank 8. The Founders. El Chapo and El Mayo, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Born in poverty in the mountains of Sinaloa in 1957. Joined the drug trade as a teenager. Rose through the Guadalajara cartel. Survived assassination attempts, military operations, and 2 prison breaks, including one through a tunnel dug directly under his cell. Extradited to the United States in 2017. Convicted in 2019 on 10 counts of drug trafficking, murder conspiracy, and other charges. Sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years, currently in ADX Florence, the most secure prison in the United States. He will never be free again. Ismael El Mayo Zambada. Born in Sinaloa in 1948, where El Chapo was flashy, El Mayo was invisible. He never went to prison, not once, for over 50 years of running one of the world's largest criminal enterprises. He built the cartel's political connections, among its corruption networks, and its financial systems. Arrested in July 2024 in New Mexico after being flown to the U.S., allegedly against his will, now in federal custody, facing charges that could put him in prison for the rest of his life. Together, these two men built an organization that at its peak was generating an estimated $3 billion annually. That created infrastructure, political influence, and criminal networks spanning 6 continents. And now, with both founders in U.S. custody, either children and lieutenants are tearing that legacy apart, fighting over who controls what remains. The Sinaloa Cartel is not dead, but it is bleeding. And in the world of cartels, weakness, even temporary weakness, is the most dangerous thing of all. From a 14-year-old on a hilltop in the Sierra Madre to the founders of the world's most powerful drug empire, now sitting in American prison cells. The Sinaloa Cartel survived El Chapo's arrest. It survived U.S. indictments, military operations, and the death of allies. But it may not survive itself, because the most dangerous enemy the Sinaloa Cartel has ever faced isn't the DEA or the Mexican Army or the CJNG. It's the question of who comes next, rank after rank. The climb never stops. Subscribe, because next week we're going somewhere completely different. We're leaving Mexico and going to Japan. Your life as every rank in the Yakuza. See you there. See you there.